You're listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am Dee Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, June 20th, 2025. It's been a week.
It has. Big nerd week, let me tell you.
Please,
let me tell you, because you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This week, this is hot off the press news.
Because we're recording this on Friday, June 20th.
What happened this week?
Ah, yes.
Darrington Press.
Darrington Press?
Which is the publishing imprint of Critical Role.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Published, they published Daggerheart and Candela Obscura.
Mm-hmm.
They announced they hired two new people in senior leadership positions.
Did some headhunting, from what I hear.
They did some So they announced that Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford are joining Darrington Press. Now,
those are names even I recognize.
And you're all sitting here thinking, who in the hell are those people? Well, I will tell you, dear listener, Jeremy Crawford is a graduate of San Luis Obispo High School that in no way overlapped with Dan and I.
Is that true? Or they did?
He did. He did
overlap.
No, he did not overlap.
Oh, he did not overlap.
No, he's actually. I went down this rabbit hole. So for those that don't know,
and Andrew and I graduated from San Luis Obispo High School.
Yeah, he actually is like. I think maybe he overlapped with my brother. My brother's older than me.
He's older than us. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, he's enough that like my brother's older than us. He's even older, right?
Oh wow! So he's ancient.
Yeah, ancient. Yeah, practically a fossil. But yeah, so that's Chris Perkins.
But getting hired
Jeremy
by
Crawford.
Critical Role, so can't complain.
So the reason why this is like a story is because it was a big deal earlier this year that they both announced separately, but nearly the same time, that they're stepping down and retiring from Wizards of the Coast. They're done with the D&D, right?
Yeah, we just want to get out of role playing.
They're done. Yeah, they're just retiring. They're
spend
old.
some time with family. That kind of stuff.
Move to the home country or whatever.
Psych.
And honestly, I don't know if it's. I think it's that's a hot topic. Like, was this actually the long thing, or was this actually
right.
Darrington reached out to them after they stepped down from WotC and said, "But would you like to keep working?"
That's totally fair. Like, again, we have zero inside information.
Yeah,
I don't have any. And it's very possible that they retired and then they reached out. That's totally. We're not here to conspiratize.
But it is this kind of thing where, it's sort of a big deal because they're like they were the two biggest names in D&D. I would actually argue Chris Perkins is probably, while maybe not the creator of the actual play, he is probably the one who gave it legs, because
he worked with the
Penny Arcade.
Incorporated. Yeah. Okay.
The original,
that's why I know that guy's name.
What most people would know is the original D&D actual play podcast with Penny Arcade was Chris Perkins. This was back in like 2009 or 10.
Yeah, around there.
Like, while other people may have been doing it, he's the one that put it on the map for a lot of people. And so he kind of has that thing. And Jeremy Crawford, as a performer, took over for Perkins when he stepped away from Acquisitions Inc. But I still think this really is like the two big names. But Jeremy Crawford was like the big rules guy at Wizards of the Coast. He did lots of D&D stuff. They both did D&D stuff. In all the promotional videos, they were the two that they interviewed about like what's coming with D&D. Oh, here's Chris or Jeremy talking about what's new with D&D. So it really is this thing where like, wow, the two big names in D&D-overse retired from the industry, and then like literally a hot second later said like, not from the whole industry. Like by retiring
just from the
industry.
Old industry.
Yeah. So who knows what it's going to be?
Have their positions been announced? Like what they're doing?
Yes, it's the same job titles they had at WotC. I think creative director and like game director or something like that.
Woof. Okay.
So not really, like, we don't really know what it's going to be. Yeah. It was an announcement this week, but it's the kind of thing that like gets everyone hot to talk about it. Like, there are probably an infinity of YouTube and podcast shows that already have fucking some dipshit nerd, talking about like, oh, this is gonna ruin the industry.
Is this the great betrayal?
Yeah. Oh my God, is this the death of Wizards of the Coast? You know. Oh my God, is D&D never coming back? You're like, honestly, I don't know. I have no idea. I just think it's kind of wild that this happened, where it was kind of like, oh. If anything, that seems like a big deal.
If anything, it shows that Critical Role is doubling down on its commitment to its own system, its own game. Honestly.
I hope so. And I will actually say,
you spoke very positively of Daggerheart.
Oh no, right? Daggerheart is it's living rent free in my head, which none of you realized I charged rent for that.
It costs $10 a month just to be his friend.
Yeah, and Daggerheart got in for free. It is the thing that Daggerheart is, I think, in this weird space where it could be a big deal. Who knows? The one thing I'll actually say, and I think other people have expressed this, is there's a certain vibe of Daggerheart was so, like, it wore its influences on its sleeve, right? And a lot of them were not D&D. In fact, they were actually like askew from D&D. So there's this idea that like, but you just brought like the two most D&D people you could find. What does that mean? Is that like a pivot to go back to, oh no, we have to make it closer to the old form, or is this a different direction? And who knows? We'll find out over the next 6 to 18 months. But it was the kind of thing where it's like, I was so excited about Daggerheart, like, oh, here, this game that's hitting all the right points, and now like, oh, but you're bringing in those guys, you know?
So I mean, actually, that's the question I had for you as a person that has opinions about current D&D, especially with the last couple of iterations of that game. Did that? I mean, honestly, my question is, what is your reaction to hearing Critical Role hiring these people? Does it make you go, oh, interesting, or does it make you go, oh, interesting? Oh,
I actually am like not into it. Good for them, I guess. But if they announce them working on Daggerheart, my brain, for me, that's discomforting because actually, let me correct. Chris Perkins, actually, I think I'm okay with. He has a certain vibe. He has a certain thing where, like, I think he's done with D&D, and is doing different things. But Jeremy Crawford, like, I am reasonably confident that, like, some of the stuff that I disliked about my experience with D&D in the last 2 years, it's been suggested to me that those were his things. Like, this is what he thought the game should be like. Right. So it's like, so like he likes games that suck. I'm teasing, but like, because I say that because different people want different things. But like the things that were like, wow, this made me really unhappy. I've kind of like through internet research or whatever. Like, I think those are his things. Right. So like, then I don't want him involved with the game that I think I like. I've not played Daggerheart yet. It's on my list. But like, just like, I hope that mean man doesn't come in and ruin it before I have a chance to enjoy it.
Well, here's hoping.
Yeah, but who knows, right? Luckily, it's all make-believe and books. Like, even at the worst, like, he can't take away my joy.
It seems like it'd be a strange... Especially since they've released rules and books for Daggerheart. It would be strange for them to be like, hey, can you come in and make this more D&D? Especially considering the whole reason why they created the whole game.
Well, but so here's the reason. What I'd actually say is some of the reaction, because it's so indie. Like it reaches into like the PBTA and the whatever stuff I talked about last time. Right. I think some people are actually kind of put off by that. which is fine. Like, not all games are for everyone. So I could see that, like, if they want this game to be a financial trajectory, like, there is an impetus to make it more like the thing people recognize, right? To make it more like the familiar.
Sure.
Which for me is like, oh, but I don't like the familiar. Actually,
sure.
I'd rather you not. But I could see why, as a business decision, making a game that's not fun for Andrew is actually good for business.
Right. Andrew just likes bad games.
Yeah,
just kidding,
that's fair. I get that. I don't like the things that are popular. I like stuff that's weird. But anyway, who knows what'll come of it. It will be something I will undoubtedly talk about again in the future, because it does have the vibe of like, this is important.
Right. And honestly, like, yeah, they came in and they're probably doing work, but I bet the entire company is just kind of not resting on their laurels, but just kind of hanging back and seeing how the public accepts Daggerheart,
right,
based on what's been released, and then make decisions using these two new hires, as well as the rest of the team, to modify and iterate.
I do hope that so Spencer Stark, he's the lead guy on Daggerheart. I do hope he at least doesn't like. I don't think they're gonna like can him or whatever. I just like the fact he went so hard with this stuff of like, here are the things that inspired me, and here's the game I made from them. Mm-hmm. Like part of me worries that like, will he be sidelined in favor of the old guard from yesteryear, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
that's the part, like, because I do think, like, I think the biggest problem with D&D is legacy. Like, it is this idea that people from 50 years ago are like, this is the game I wanted. Like, well, okay.
Right.
Go fucking play that game. Right. Like,
yeah.
Things change. People move on. Times change. And I realize that that's not a popular opinion. I actually want to make a reference, and we should include this in the show notes, to the bizarro fucking trailer for Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition that came out at Gen Con like 2007, which is this dude with a really shitty French accent. It's still the same game, but not the same, or whatever. Like, it's this bizarre, but I realize I'm complaining. I'm that guy. Like, I'm like, no, the game should change. We should move forward, because what people like and what we do is different. But there are some people who want the conventional, the thing they had when they were 10 or 20,
Dude, I got so much shit. I remember actually bringing up this concept with fellow faculty at my university, people that were teaching like nerd classes, and I remember going, I feel like I had a bit of a Cassandra here, because back in like 2011, I was like, I think there's like an inherited conservatism to fandom, and people were like laughing at me, and then post that is when like Gamergate happened and all this shit kind of happened. But like what you're saying touches on exactly kind of what I always worry about, is nerd fandom is so rooted in nostalgia, and if you lean too hard into that, you kind of start becoming a conservative asshole, right? Where we start seeing gatekeeping, we start seeing sexism and just bigotry, because because it's not what it was when I was 12. When people hated me because I played RPGs or whatever, right? It's such a fine line, and whenever I hear people talking about, it's better when it was the way it was before when I was 5, or not 5, but like 8, 10, 12. Like I always bristle, because I'm like, that's dangerous kind of language, because we start getting exclusionary, we start getting gatekeeping, we start getting hostile, which is not what nerd shit should be about. To me, it should be about inclusion. It should be about reaching out, right? And improvement. Like, let's keep nerd shit iterating and be relevant as the years progress.
Well, and I'll say that I also get the idea of this is different and I don't like it.
Right.
And I think that's
Right.
okay. Like, I think that's okay.
Right.
It's okay to be like, I don't like this new thing.
Sure.
But especially in something like, like role-playing games where it's books or, it used to be. Now it's not. But like, people used to joke like, well, it's not like when they released the new edition of D&D, the Pinkertons broke into your house and stole the old book.
Right.
And to a certain extent, actually, I would say that one thing I think that the community has been able to do, and this is I like that. Like we had something else to talk about.
Yeah, this is more interesting, honestly.
This is actually a problem if you look at the fall of TSR in the 90s.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's a whole what kind of motivated based on I've read interviews, and I'm not an expert on this, with Ryan Dancy, who's one of the guys at WotC who kind of spearheaded a lot of this. The idea that they wanted to buy the D&D from TSR,
right,
and then that's where they created the open game license, which that's a whole other conversation. But one of the ideas was
search our archives for it. By the way,
they didn't want the game to get locked behind some corporation.
TSR didn't.
No, WotC didn't.
Oh, really?
In the early days, right?
Sure.
TSR actually did. Like they were very aggressive about it. Like there's a whole Shannon Appelkline. He's I think Appelkline. He writes a lot of the history of role playing game stuff. That like he's actually if you go on to DM's Guild or Drive-Thru-RPG, he writes a lot of the histories of the classic products.
You can also find PDFs of every Long John book at Drive-Thru Comics.
Yeah. So he talks a lot about how they actually were very protective and litigious. They really wanted no one else can do it but them.
Interesting.
Sure.
I mean, and that makes sense. Yeah, I guess, especially in those early days.
Which is why that's a problem when either your company is now headed by someone who doesn't like it. Is distrustful of the product, or if you're just a bad company and you're making shit, which was what TSR really leaned into in really my lifetime. I would say late 80s to the 90s, TSR was a bad company making garbage.
Right.
They were churning product. They weren't paying their bills. They were so.
Because I'm sorry to cut in. For some historical context. Was WotC's first play with D&D third edition? I think that was their first.
So they bought. No, I think when they bought it from TSR, I think TSR would bankrupt.
Oh, that would do it. That makes.
I forget the details, but they actually released. I want to say they did some late second edition content in the late 90s. But really, their biggest thing was third edition, which came out in 2001.
Right.
That was their big foray. That's when they unified the brand.
Right.
Because they got rid of the idea of advanced Dungeons and Dragons and and not advanced.
Yeah.
So that was their that was their first thing, and that's where they created the OGL, the Open Game License. With the idea being, hey, we're never going to lock it behind a company curtain like that again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, we this whole thing. It was funny because they clearly since then they've tried to, right?
Yeah. Suddenly WotC got super big and became a big old corporation. So what are you going to do?
So it's and that's I think it's just a weird thing where you have this game where, because right now the problem is that maybe D&D is it's very successful, to be very clear, but maybe they can see the writing on the wall. I don't know, maybe they or they've just made enough eat shit fuck ups, right?
WotC has
that they're realizing they're losing control of their thing. I don't know, it's a weird place. Because at the end of the day, again, role-playing games are make-believe that we just do.
Right.
And no one can actually stop you at the table from doing whatever you want.
Right. I mean, actually, it reminds me of two things, right, based on what you were mentioning before. But first, I think, how much do you think the rise of the indie of the indie sphere of tabletop role playing games is maybe is softening their stance or at least getting to think a bit more progressively, right? And then, well, let's just start with that. Like, how much do you think that might be affecting the decision making here in terms of where they're going forward with the brand?
Yeah, you mean Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, if you will.
Please,
Transformers. I don't think they're actually. I don't think they give a shit. I mean, like, we're talking about an industry where you have Godzilla, and then random Japanese people, and that's the industry. It's Godzilla, and then a bunch of little people going like, "Oh, Godzilla," you know, like it's not even a like. It's the guy who's the $1 billion player, and the next closest guy is the 100th millionaire, right, or whatever, right? It is this kind of thing where
you don't think the indie sphere has started to eat any of not one specific company, just as a whole has started to eat any of WotC's lunch?
No, I think there's like the indie sphere is. It's probably one of those rising tide things where like
sure
that like is like more people play, but like D&D, like one of the problems people complain about is if you'll meet like you go to your local game store, you're like, hey, I want to play role playing games. So I'm like, great, we have D&D right here.
D&D.
You're like,
it's the
actually, I'd like to play something else. Oh, you know what? We don't have that. You know, it's D&D is like the Kleenex of the industry.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah,
to the point where some people even they say D&D, but they mean something else.
Right.
Like,
yeah. No, I think you're right. Absolutely. Right. Which maybe it'll be interesting to see what Daggerheart does in the next, let's just say 6 to 8 months, and perhaps to see what WotC does in the next 8 months to a year and a half in response to it, because maybe this is their move to Crit Roll's hiring of these two very big names formerly associated with Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast, WotC, could be enough to give them a shiver. Again, just on like the social media, just the community aspect of it, which is. I mean, WotC would probably say the community is everything with D&D. And, like, here are two major community members changing the flags they fly under.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
It's... I don't know. And I didn't expect to talk about role-playing games again.
It's another Andrew Day.
Well, it's... And I do... I'll go to that thing where, like, even like role-playing games that do really well, like they still pale to the machine that is Hasbro, right? I would actually, and actually one of the things that people are talking a lot, I've seen at least discussion of comparing what Daggerheart's doing right now to Magpie Games with Avatar. So the Avatar Kickstarter was it may still be, I don't know if it still is,
based on the animated series, not the movies.
Based on the animated series, The Last Airbender, at SEC. Their Kickstarter was at the time the biggest RPG Kickstarter that has ever happened.
Wow.
So actually, I'm gonna use my computer and look it up.
Computron, engage.
Okay. Nope, not that one.
Yep.
No. All right. So they did this Kickstarter. I forget when the timing was. Let's see, 81,567 backers pledged $9,535,317 to help bring this project to life.
$9 million.
In Magpie Games, the people that did it were basically a fucking mom and pop shop. Right?
They released a game though, right? Please tell me they released a game.
And they still are.
Good.
So now, let me now connect it to. There's a Kickstarter now for Avatar Legends. Legends, that's the game.
Right.
Voyage of the Unity. This is an adventure set in the Roku era, being hosted by Beetle and Grimm's, that's Matthew Lillard's company where they do RPG overwrought. Like it's what if your RPG but excessive, right? Like here's trinkets, here's knickknacks.
Gotcha.
So they're doing one where it's an adventure to play, like a 5-part adventure set in the Roku era. It includes lots of fucking Beetle and Grimm's horseshit. 462,000.
Wow.
So like, generally the consensus has been that was a big thing. It blew up, but it was a PBTA powered by the Apocalypse,
right?
And that just didn't hit with the community because it wasn't 5e.
Right. Interesting.
D&D.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the thing is I think people look at that and they're saying, oh, is Daggerheart, is this the new Avatar, right? Like, man, they had a hot fucking release. Everyone's excited. Yeah. But in a year, is anyone going to be playing this game?
But that's discounting, I think, the crit roll of it, though, right? Like, they are a
well,
huge
and
brand.
that is what, obviously, like, is Crit Roll Season 4 going to use Daggerheart?
That's a good question.
Right.
It would be the first season where they'd have that opportunity? Or what did they use? Season 3, they used D&D?
Yeah, they've used, so originally it was what, 4th edition, then Pathfinder. I forget but basically since the show has been airing publicly, it's been D&D 5e.
Right.
I believe. Originally may have been some other, but like what it's been since time immemorial has basically been 5e.
Crit Roll fans, let us know in the comments.
Or don't, actually. So
that's the thing. Encourage engagement with the community, Andrew. Fucking Christ.
But is Daggerheart going to be the new thing? Will they lean to that? Because that would actually help build it. Although there's a joke because they're actually doing a let's play of it. Critical Role is Age of Umbra, which is one of the campaign frames in the setting. I'll explain later. But the idea that they're playing it, and at least in the first episode or two, there's some people like first of all, it's like, well, this doesn't feel like D&D,
right?
But also
because it's not.
Arguably, the struggle of them as players playing this game, because I think they've been playing this Critical Role game for so long that it's honestly Critical Role wasn't like D&D. But it's also not really working with Daggerheart because they play the game they play, which is Matt Mercer does his thing and they all do their thing, and
which is how tabletop games go. It's not about necessarily following the rules; it's about following the table, right? And giving them the experience that is fun, so that people come back every week for God knows how long the campaign goes for, right?
Right. So we'll see. And so that could be the thing, right? It could be they adopt Daggerheart and fucking J. Craw and Chris Perkins are providing content or something.
Yeah, J. Craw. Yeah.
I don't know why I've decided I call him J. Craw.
Because you like him least, apparently.
No, he's fine. He's fine.
I want to go back.
I'm a little salty that really San Luis Obispo high school grad. I actually kind of want to be like,
just because you hate your hometown, Andrew.
Did you
have to hate him?
Did you take English from Mrs. Avery?
I want to go back.
The idea that actually someone's going to point him to this, whatever reason, and he's going to be like, "Well, yes, I did."
Of course. I want to go back a little bit because you mentioned something that's, I think, a dividing line between just different types of games, right? Like you said, when it's not like the Gestapo's going to come in and take all your 3rd edition books and stuff like that when they release 4E or when so on and so forth, right?
Right.
But
sorry, I said the Pinkertons.
Yeah, same. Yes, same. But in competitive nerd games, from what I understand, and I am not an expert. In fact, I am less than a novice. Competitive games like Magic and stuff like that, aren't there official decrees or rules that come out that like make certain decks obsolete that actually affect, if you are competitive, that is, how you play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What the fuck is competitive D&D?
Exactly. Well,
actually, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I always joke. One of my first D&Ds was the 2nd edition Player's Handbook. I had other stuff. That's the one I remember having. I had like the dude on horseback with a sword on a mountainous background.
Was that D&D or AD&D?
AD&D. Okay. I also had the basic set, but that's a different story. But it actually, like, they would actually have different rules. They had the basic rules, like, oh, here's the rules, but then there'd be a sidebar. Oh, here's the advanced, or was it the optional rule or the tournament rule? You're like, wait, what's a fucking tournament rule for D&D? Right. And it was the idea that was the rules that would use at D&D tournaments, which is basically, I mean, later it became, I think, like the living games, like the living Greyhawk or the whatever, the RPGA. But also it was just, you would go to a convention and they'd run a tournament game where you'd play with Gary Gygax in his new dungeon or whatever. Actually, at that point, not Gary, but and you'd sit down to play with the idea being, will we survive to the end of the dungeon, right? And so you'd use the tournament rules to make sure you're all on the same page. But again, wait, D&D had tournament rules?
I mean, don't tell them. They'll probably do this. Like, they'd probably I could see them going, like, again, chasing sort of like the video game model. Like, we're going to release multiplayer D&D, and everybody's like, oh, that sounds fun, but like that's what D&D is.
Well, that's like, and I will actually say, is someone who's spoken very highly of Pathfinder. Mm-hmm. That's one of their big bread and butters, the Pathfinder Society. It's the organized play where you go play at your local shop and you're part of like the big story, but they have the official rules, whatever, like the PFS rules. And so that's the thing, which is not something that a game like Daggerheart, which is very, again, Powered by the Apocalypse, is a game about telling stories, basically, right? The whole PBTA thing, which is what Daggerheart gets a lot of genetics from. That there's no organized play for that. Like you don't have like, well, I showed up at this one house or this one table at this one shop and we played a certain way, and I went somewhere else with the same character.
I see.
Like no, that's not a thing. So that's that weird thing where D&D still, and Pathfinder 2, they cater that organized play, that tournament rules, that official rules. Whereas, like, yeah, man, if Daggerheart releases an errata, I mean, sure, you might use it, right? Or you might not. Because guess what? You're playing at your table with your friends.
Yeah. That's I think what generally how people but what they think of when they think of tabletop role-playing games. The whole like tournament idea is out of left field. But if WotC could figure out a way to supremely monopolize that, and maybe like if they can monopolize that, like basically do what live service video games do, right? Where there's a constant influx of payments, and, microtransactions and whatnot.
Oh, they would ride that train all the way to the bank.
It would become that would be D&D standard, and like the playing with your friends thing. Like if they could monopolize and make and standardize the idea of like, no, this is your character, and you take this character to different games, to different places. Like that's a crazy business model, but in a modern world, I could see that somehow working if they were able to actually catch that fire.
But I really want to interrupt you and say that was D&D. Like there was a very healthy chunk of D&D since the origin that was like once they adopted all the organized play stuff,
right?
The tournament stuff, the RPGA. That was how a lot of people played. Because the idea was you didn't necessarily have a group, right? You didn't have your group of friends where you played this, but you'd go to the convention or the whatever. Mm-hmm. So like, I think there's a whole subset of people for that's their play experience.
How many of those people younger than 50?
Actually, I was to say fair point, but I think because there still are some, right? There are people like with the ongoing, like what D&D has Adventurers League,
right?
Pathfinder has a Pathfinder Society. I would say it's a shrinking demographic, but it's still a demographic. I mean,
all I'm saying is that if Wizards of the Coast could figure out a way to like turn a business plan on that idea, they would drop the current thought of like D&D is a game you play with your friends and you have a group, and they would drop that at an instant if they could maximize income for this tournament style of role playing. Something that video games have done very well, right? And seeing how Wizards of the Coast has modified, some would argue, their rules and systems to be more video game like in some instances. I'm sure that's a brass ring they're always reaching for.
That was a 4th edition thing, man. 5th edition isn't about that. Whoa.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, that was one of the big complaints of 4th edition D&D. It's just a video game.
Right. They World of Warcraft it. Yeah. You got a tank. You got a DPS. You got a healer. Yeah. That's interesting. So yeah, I'm sure they would love to. Going back to sort of my example with Magic the Gathering, which is I'm sure they would love to be able to say, yeah, no, anybody that has any of the 5th edition games whenever the new edition comes out, they could just say everything else is invalid. You have to buy all the new stuff, which of course that's not how tabletop gaming works. Especially because tabletop gaming books can be, and just buying stuff can be pretty expensive. I've seen those Kickstarters. Yeah, that's more just actually tabletop games, less TTRPGs, but we boxes with all the minis and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a lot of conversation came out of this idea, which is just that Critical Role hired 2 new guys.
Right, and so we had a whole plan to do an episode.
Anyway, so my Week in Geek, Andrew.
I actually had a Week in Geek I was going to talk about, but flip the table. We'll do that next week.
We'll see where things go. But yeah, super interesting. And what I do like, one thing that doing the show for over 11 years now has taught me is that the tabletop gaming space is always evolving. And always full of drama and interesting developments. So thanks for bringing that to the table.
Yeah. And, we'll see where it goes. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about it just because Daggerheart, as I said, is, one of my one of the hot games on my table right now, or like in my brain. I've not played it yet. I may play it and be like, well, this game fucking sucks.
So,
but
yeah, would you think you'd run a game, or do you know people that are interested in as well and would run it, or would you have to be the person to initiate that?
I am the person that initiates everything. I mean, I would love if someone's like, "Hey, do you want to play Daggerheart?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'd say with my local friend group, I run everything, mostly, other than the D&D game. But I would say there's certainly places I could play, like in the nerdy RPG Discord I'm part of. Right. I could certainly go there and play with someone. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably end up running it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll let us know how it goes.
Oh, of course I will. Absolutely. You'll hear about it. You'll hear it first here.
Either it will be a success or a dagger through the heart. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky at dbethelcomics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark@dice.camp.
Well, you're on our website at forallintents.net. You can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you'll find the show simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to the show there, please like and subscribe, and as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music and more at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 Attribution License.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out most, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Speaking of algorithms, Andrew, I think I might have ruined mine completely. I was watching a video on the YouTube, where you can also find our show, like and subscribe, ring the bell, about talking about visual effects. I think it's Collider Crew, and they brought on Adam Savage, former Mythbuster, and before that, former VFX guy that worked on a bunch of different movies and shows and stuff. And they were dissecting visual effects shots from the film Brazil, Terry Gilliam film. I learned an interesting fun fact. Terry Gilliam he's still alive, is a notorious kind of like artistic troll. He doesn't give a fuck. I mean, when you come out of Monty Python, you don't give a fuck about anything or anybody. In fact, you might want to poke the bear at times. And apparently, the head of the studio that owned Brazil hated the movie profoundly, to the point where they didn't submit it to, I think it was Cannes, the film festival.
Right.
So Terry Gilliam actually snuck it in, and it won whatever festival it was. I think it was Cannes, and which made the studio head kind of accept the movie with shame and put it out there. Anyway, another aspect that Terry Gilliam used to troll this shitty studio exec was that he named his company, for the purposes of Brazil, he named it Poo Poo Pictures. So that whenever this exec had to talk about it, he's like, oh yes, this new film from Poo Poo Pictures. And he just did it to troll this I'm going to say poor exec. He's probably rich, and it was or is, I don't know if he's still alive, an actual piece of garbage. But the problem is this, Andrew. As soon as I learned this, I'm like, oh, open up Google. And then what I did was I typed into Google, Poo Poo Pictures, and it did not add comma Terry Gilliam. And I was like, as soon as I hit enter, I'm like, oh no, what have I done?
Well, first of all, you discover that Google is now broken.
Yeah, so... But based on that, it would give me all the shittiest results.
Yeah.
Luckily, I haven't seen any...
all the sponsored content.
I mean, really. not to belabor the metaphor or the theme here, it hasn't dropped any or hasn't affected any of my Google results. But that was my first thought. It was just like, oh no, my machine has told the internet that I want to see Poo Poo Pictures, which is not. I just want to see I want to learn more about this fake company. This LLC basically that he made for this movie, and do they have stationery? What did it look like? Right? I learned my lesson. Be sure to when you go into Google, be sure to include all relevant information, because you do not want to even tempt the goblins of the machine. But I might have gotten away with it. Now that I'm putting it out onto this podcast, I might have made it even worse. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Poo Poo Pictures, comma Terry Gilliam. That's all I have to say about that. I didn't actually add the comma Terry Gilliam because I was too ashamed and scared of what I had done that I just closed everything. I'm like, I'm going to go downstairs and play video games instead. Because what if it affects the whole household? I have to tell my wife, so yeah, I accidentally searched Poo Poo Pictures. I'm sorry.
There's not a poo-poo that shows up.
So until you do responsible Google searches, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Raspel.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Go to the outro?
Yeah, fuck it. We're done.
Oh, Jesus. So
Wrap it up.
En español, por favor.
Boopo. Boopo.
Poo-poo. Actually, that ties into the outro I have planned.
Booparse.
I'm going to talk about something called Poo Poo Pictures.
Oh. Get off my plane.
I didn't steal your kid. Wait, that's two different movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well.
Get off my plane.
Give me back my son! And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about.
But filtered through creative...
Inquisitive.
Yeah. Thank you, TV.
That was a Poo Poo podcast.